My friend Barb took this beautiful photo in Scotland, and I decided to paint it. So the first thing to do is put it through Lightroom and give it the right emphasis, and then I turned it into a black and white and a square format because I knew that's the kind of frame that was going into. Going through all those steps makes everything else so easy because once I have it on a grid system, I can transfer it over onto my watercolor paper. Now, I painted this twice. First time on watercolor paper that was really inexpensive. It was just pulp paper. And then the second time, which is what you're seeing here, was done on 100% cotton because it would give me much better result. I applied a very light wash of blue for the sky and then moved over to a purple shade for the mountains in the background. And I did progress that into a very desaturated, kind of a beigey tone because I wanted everything else to be really light in the foreground. And I think that if I painted this again, I would make it even lighter and put in far less detail in the foreground as well, because I think that would have kept the emphasis onto that really bright point where the contrast is most severe. And I think that just naturally becomes the focal point. One of the things I learned by painting it first on inexpensive paper is that the contrast was lost because I wasn't paying much attention to the differences between warm tones and cool tones. So all of the colors that I'm using for the foliage in the front, in fact, is a really bright, warm green. And then I'm going to contrast that by a blue-green in the background for the trees. So they don't have to be nearly as dark. The focus will be to keep the colors much cooler because they are in the background. However, that's also my focal point area, so that contrast has to be really sharp. So I'm keeping the center really light and really warm, and all the trees next to it are going to be dark and cool, which really helps to emphasize where the eyes should be going. I kept the grasses and the detail in the foreground fairly light, and in fact, if I painted it again, as I said, I would keep it even less intricate because again, I think I'm competing with where I want the eye to go. I too am struggling with deciding what to paint and what not to paint. The easiest thing to do is to take a photograph and try to paint everything that you see. That's just basically copying it completely. But as an artist, we need to decide which parts need to fall into the background and which parts need to be emphasized and which parts need to be held back on. And I think that's something that I'm still definitely learning. I think I will give this another try, but for now, here is the first one. Here is the second one in a frame, and don't be surprised if you see me paint it once again.